name is Sofia Grytsenko, and I'm presenting on my thesis called Pathways to Joy, the Foundational Stepping Stones to a Flourishing Society. Before I start, I'm going to hand out these little slips. If everyone can just take one that speaks to you and keep it, that's my little souvenir, and it'll be more clear in the future. But in terms of my thesis, I'm using the term flourishing as it's defined by the positive design research from Desmond in terms of a society where members want to develop as individuals, live their lives to the fullest potential, and act in the best interest of society. But first, a little bit about me. I'm Sofia again, and I've always been someone who loves cute objects, weird places, and exciting experiences with my friends. But as I grew up and moved into New York City for this program, I started to realize that there is a substantial lack of these moments around me, these moments that brought me so much love and joy throughout my life. And one day I decided to do a little experiment and map out my daily routine and see what stood out to me in terms of positives or negatives. And just in the first 30 minutes, I was dealt with a lot of intervention that caused me to feel kind of negative throughout the day and a little bit out of control, like subway delays, weird smells, or rude people. And if you spend a lot of time in the city, you are no stranger to these things. And I'm not the only one who is affected by these surroundings. Around 13% of adults in the New York City area have depression, and nearly 1 in 4 experience any sort of mental health disorder in a given year. And alongside fast-paced and crowded commutes, overworking and social comparison, the surroundings of the city don't do anything to support people, leaving them feel a little bit alone. So I started to wonder, how can I bring these moments that brought me joy throughout my life and bring them to the city? But what is joy versus happiness? Because happiness is something that is defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary as contentment, a state of well-being and contentment. So it's long-term and stable. So joy is a separate feeling from this. Does community contribute to joy, and do our physical surroundings also contribute to that? I was also wondering if joy is something that can be personally measured person to person and also experienced as a group. I wanted to start by conducting the current research on joy, and I started with Ingrid Lee. She wrote Joyful, and she argues that while joy is a very complex feeling, it can be triggered by many different things throughout our lives. Something as small as color or the concept of abundance can spark that feeling within us. Gretchen Rubin argues that small routine changes through your life can lead to a longer feeling of contentment. So doing small joyous things per day led her to feel overall better about her life. And then Barbara argues that throughout the history of society, we've used joy as a form of community and to connect with one another. But I wanted to take it outside of the books and talk to some real-life people who are in industries that benefit from joy, or people get a lot of joy. So I talked to designers who specialize in immersive experiences, architects, psychotherapists who work with the art, and a variety of designers and data visualization experts. And all of them had one thing to say, is that joy is not a formula. It is something that is got between different design features, but there is not one thing that suits everybody. And that kind of led me to this joy theory called the pillar of joy. Someone can experience the full feeling of joy if they have a sensory feature, a shared connection, and a spontaneous moment. This leads them to remember this experience for a long period of time. I wanted to test each forms of these pillars through prototypes, and that led me to my Explorations of Joy series. I first started with the first pillar, which is sensory exploration with the pendulum. This mimics a kid's seesaw when a pen is rested on it, allowing people to take a break during their workday and also engage in play. I also looked at interiors and color to see if those sensations spark joy within people or any sort of feelings by creating a map for people to map their day with colors. Maybe being able to separate the heavy emotions that come with your day by giving them a joyful outlet. But I also explored creativity and convenience in terms of one of the pillars, and that's for shared connection. This is a drawing booklet for people to take out to their day-to-day and draw on the subway or while they're walking, and hopefully interact with people as they go. Finally, the blob of the day is a culmination of this theory. It includes a sensory feature and a shared connection in terms of me drawing the blob and giving it to one of my friends or classmates. And then finally, it is a unique experience because you never know when one is going to show up on your desk. One day someone came up to me and they said, I started looking forward to seeing a blob on my desk, and they were disappointed when one did not appear. I also wanted to see if this theory of joy existed in the real world. So I went to Pop Mart, a very big toy design industry, and I wanted to see why people were going there in person versus just ordering it online. 5% of people were following an impulse, deviating from their day, while 75% do not have a Pop Mart in their home country or state, never being there. So a completely unique experience. So my first insight from all of these prototypes and talking to SMEs is that the sensations and experiences that bring people joy are closely tied to their inner child. And this comes from directly an SME source, Jake Adams, who is the co-founder of ArtBeat, an interactive art installation that was based on nostalgia, comfort, and technology. He wanted people to get back into their primal state of learning like they were babies again. And he felt like it did seem to bring a lot of joy to people, even though that wasn't the inherent point. My second insight is that when young adults feel safe, they're more willing to take the kinds of risks that lead to growth and joy. David Cohen from Meow Wolf, a company that creates immersive multimedia experiences for people of all ages, says that they really value their immersive experiences being different from everyday environments, and that this sense of novelty is what they consider a core aspect of joy. My third insight was that encounters with trees, plants, sky, or weather puncture the hardness of city life and make people softer and more present. This came from a quote with an architect. Again, when you walk into a room, you immediately feel it. You think, oh, this is nice, but if you walk in and it's really stuffy, you feel, oh my god, I can't breathe. So we're more likely to just instantly recognize whether we're comfortable in a space or not. But I wanted to take all of my learnings into the streets and to my regular users and everyday people. And I created Balloon Day, which took place on Thursday, December 4th. And I took a big red balloon onto Madison Square Park and to interact with regular pedestrians to see what were the reactions, if they liked the balloon or disliked it, and if they would engage with me out of their own free will. Some results is that people ended up coming up to me, and even though some of them were a little apprehensive at first, they left with a big smile on their face. And one girl in the middle specifically said, "It was so big, bright, and in your face, how could I miss it?" Another participatory workshop I did was Routes to Joy, and I wanted to see, can people actually remember the things that bring them joy throughout a day? Are they paying attention throughout their commute? And do people react to color, shape, and texture? So I have my stickers. During the workshop, people, they shared their journeys, they connected on frustrations, and they laughed. I think I also got some feedback on how people are not inspired during their work commutes, they just want to get it over with, and the journeys that they take to the grocery store, to the park, stood out more to them. This is the results. Very happy joy maps with stickers used in terms of color and shape. So each one had a unique emotion identified with it. So some insights I got from my workshops were that disrupting autopilot creates presence. Joy was in the journey. We never finished our loop around the pond because we were having so much fun. This workshop participant was talking about their daily walk, but one day they got so distracted and had a better day than if they just would have finished their walk routinely. The next insight was, while joy can happen in isolation, it multiplies when witnessed. So again, another workshop participant says, it was also nice when I got to work and people were asking about her day. It was fun to talk about the farmer's market because she had fun and also the people were excited for her. The sixth insight is that creatures soften people and create permission for connection. So we're always so rigid, but every single workshop participant put down a sticker for a dog, and one participant even put down 2 stickers for each dog and says, "It always makes my day when I see a dog." I think that's echoed with all of the workshop participants. Number 7 was that sensory features speak up before our minds speak up. And this is a quote using, "I use color to present emotions and shapes to represent events." While one person in the workshop was more shape-oriented and said that the shapes connected with their emotions. Finally, which is the insight that took me most by surprise, is that shared frustration builds community. You can't fix, when one participant said you can't fix stupid, but I wish people's etiquettes would get better, that was a moment where all workshop participants resounded with agreement, and it actually ended with a very positive tone. So how does one joyful experience lead to a flourishing society? My theory is that when one person experiences a joyful experience, that leads them to have a longer term of positive emotions, which leads them to go about their day in a more positive light, which increases interactions with other people, which in a city like New York is happening all the time. And hopefully with that shared interaction, it can create a joyful experience to someone else, starting the cycle over again, to hopefully create a community where everybody feels a little more excited to go outside. So how might we design moments that make people feel like children discovering something for the first time? I want to figure out how to add excitement and make people feel like they're building blocks for the first time or learning how to read. Number 2, how might we design spaces where strangers can safely share their frustrations? Because we do encounter a lot of frustration in the city, and joy does not come from just being forced to be happy. It comes from being able to express your negative emotions as well. How might we give commuters access to creature energy if they don't have an animal on their roof? How might we make nature impossible to miss or ignore on a daily commute when someone might be just checked out or on autopilot? And finally, how might we design deviations that feel discovered rather than imposed or forced? And looking ahead, I want to explore all these how might we's with prototypes, maybe by making posters that catch people's attentions or balloons, personal objects that encourage more connection while out and about, and maybe some sort of social club that encourages people to vent their frustrations and gain community from that. So further research is that I also want to talk to more SMEs and do some more winter-based tree interventions as we enter the more gloomy season of the year, in a place where people really need some form of joy. And finally, I would love to try to run one public installation in conjunction with the city to see how possible it is for artists and students like me to actually be able to create a change in the real world. And so, here are my keywords. Thank you.
This was so impressive. What is your name, Sofia?
Sofia.
This was like,
Thank you.
so good. And I had some like attention struggles, as Alex knows, but like both of you so far have had such beautifully crafted presentations that really kept our attention throughout the entire, or at least for me, this was really beautiful, and I used the colors, the pillars of joy. I love how you put these like little shapes for the SME participants. It was very easy to follow and very playful, but also very real. I love that you kind of started off in the beginning talking about how hard it can be to live in New York, and this hilarious intervention map was, I think, a very strong entry point of getting us all on the same page of like, the city can feel joyless sometimes, and like what that does for a larger, like if you want the city to be a more joyful place, a more happy place, like what we can do. And you actually, I found this all very inspiring. Your insights were amazing. I think you could like write a book after this, just from like your workshop insights are like incredible. So I thought the mapping exercise was really cool, and something to continue exploring. I just took a class at the School of Radical Attention in Brooklyn, SORA, and this reminded me a lot of that. The class I did was a cartography class, And a lot of this all spoke to the idea of attention activism, so I think that's something you could definitely explore. Is that like, in order for us to be more joyful, we have to be more attentive. We need to be getting off of our phones and into our lives. And I'm surprised that you didn't really talk about that, but also like, you know, there's many ways you could look at this, but you know, the people who are noticing you and your balloon in the park, it's like, we're a culture of people who are absorbed in their phones for many hours out of the day. So being out in nature and noticing and overcoming that fear to interact with each other is so huge, and you're creating these, once again, like portals or like places to get people to get outside of themselves. But yeah, I have some recommendations of people to get in contact with around mapping, because there's such an opportunity there of like queering the commuter experience to make it a more active experience, and you know, to address the mundanity of it all, but also that like it doesn't have to be mundane. So yeah, bravo. I thought this was really incredible, and that there's some great things you can continue doing with this.
Thank you.
So.
And I would definitely love more contacts. I want to talk to as many people as I can over the break since we're done with class. So
yeah, I'm going to put my philosopher cap on for a second. So there's a concept called eudaimonia, which is from Aristotle, which means not just happiness but flourishing. Mm-hmm. He wrote a whole book about it called the Nicomachean Ethics. But the idea is that true joy comes from the flourishing and the idea of virtues of fulfilling our kind of like roles in life. And it'd be interesting to kind of ground this. There's a whole, I mean, the notion of joy and its role in society it goes back to Aristotle. But then you have the whole movement in the last 30 years of positive psychology, and Martin Seligman, who's the founder of that, who was looking at ways in which joy, what are the grounds for a joyous life. So just in terms of research, understanding some categories, it might be useful to you know, even if you just read a summary of the Nicomachean Ethics, and eudaimonia is a concept that will help ground this in some more research. I love that you mentioned about how people come together over complaining. I mean, as a Jew, kvetching with my family is one of the main joys of my life. So communal kvetching is an important joy. And if you go to that intervention map up the top, what I love about this is that when it says leaves home, my arrow goes back home. Like I leave home and I just come right back. So I really appreciate this. This is it resonated for me so much about how I love the phenomenology of one's experience in the day, how one moves through, and I really appreciated that research aspect. You know, thinking about how does one